Good morning, Felix, Richard, Daniel, Victor, friends. Well, my pleasure coming here, and I know the reason why I'm here repeatedly. Perhaps Felix has been taking advantage of my current position as Commerce Secretary, and with my previous head as the Hong Kong's first Environment Secretary some years ago. But I think Felix is right that, well, this is in fact a very interesting and also increasingly popular and important occasion, not just for the fashion or garment trade, but also for Hong Kong being a hub, not just for this industry, but also how to carry the flag forward in this changing world. Now, I say this, well, Fashion Summit is not a fashion show, but it is in fact the Hong Kong showcase of where fashion will go, as evident from the topic you have picked, the future of design for this industry. This is also not a forum of a monologue preaching, telling how we should go green or sustainability, but rather more than just a dialogue between producers and consumers, but really a platform for interchange of ideas, sharing of thoughts, and maybe certain provoking sort of ideas which require some sparkles, some discussion as we chart our way forward. And I think these two observations of Fashion Summit is best underlined, unfortunately, by very small print in the logo. I almost missed it. In fact, under the label of Fashion Summit, the most important thing is, in fact, the subtitle there, Asia's Sustainable Fashion Event. I think that's where we have achieved over the past 4 years. And that was, in fact, the very reason that, well, my bureau and also my department, Create Hong Kong, has been the lead sponsor of this event, because this is what Hong Kong should chart ourselves for the future. But this could not have been done without all the brand names you have seen on the other side of the screen. But more interesting, I think this is not just the who's who in the industry, but also all the stakeholders, including academias, including sort of non-government agencies, including some of the green groups, some of the friends or Daniels with WWF, with whom that I have interacted very frequently in the past years in a different capacity. But I believe at this time today, this is a very unique form of dialogue today. Last year, we have gone online entirely. This year, we are back to sort of a halfway, online and offline. So one would quickly recognize that, well, event like this is being affected by the disruptive forces. COVID do have a lot of impact on fashion, on garment, on production, and also on consumption. Now, that's the first disruptive force in front of us. But interestingly, I think, contrary to people's belief, while we travel less, we are homebound, some cities are being locked down. But actually, if you look at the consumption figures, particular consumption of consumable, including garment or fashion, it doesn't come down at all. So the question is this being sustainable? Well, people travel less, but they still shop quite a lot. Well, of course, in a capitalistic economy, people do encourage consumption. But I think COVID-19 also disrupt not just the consumption pattern, but also other aspects which affect fashion, including, say, the material reuse. Because long gone are the days fashion is just a piece of cloth on your body. In fact, from the material, from nanotechnology to sensory material, we're now talking about whether fashion or clothing can also be our protective gear as we continue the way back to normality, or halfway, how are we going to cope with it? So besides material, it's also the usage. These days, we seldom sort of go out, although I still wear my uniform. But I know a lot of friends tell me that, well, if you go online, you can sort of forget about half of your fashion on screen. The usage differ. The usage do differ. And more importantly, it's also the disposal. With that consumption goes on, how are we going to dispose a product, consumable that we are having? So COVID do bear a very strong force on this, including every piece of mask that we are wearing. While they protect the maximum protection, could they be designed better? Could they be fit into everyday use? Can they be sort of mingle with all other sort of costume that we are putting on our body. And also, last but not least, is how are we going to sort of have the end of cycle treatment of all these sort of a part of the garment or fashion. Now, the second disruptive force, which goes slightly beyond this forum, is in fact the geopolitics. I need to bring this up because, 2 years ago, we were thinking, because of the trade war, the trade tariff, it might divert or disrupt trade pattern. At that time, I was seeing a lot of friends in the garment industry saying that, they need to move somewhere, going after cheaper places for production. But actually, after 2 or 3 years of the consequence of those tariffs, I do not see necessarily that pattern go on. Now, while that might be chasing after cost, but actually the supply chain has been undergoing quite a lot of stress. And it comes back to the more sort of organic, intertwined element within that supply chain. That I do not see a mass exodus of production line from one place to another, simply because of tariff. Quite the contrary. I think a lot of consumers bear the brunt in sort of absorbing the very high cost of tariff, and also including a very high logistic cost involved. People in the trade, producer side tells me that, the container fees are on the rise. Now, to what extent does a trade policy, trade disruption affect the supply chain? And to the extent of affecting, say, the future of fashion, I really don't know. That would be yet to be seen. But Felix has picked up, in fact, a no lesser force than this trade policy, trade or non-trade trade tariff, which will certainly shape and will be shaping it more, the supply chain, which is the ESG, which I think draws a greater consensus worldwide, be they from the consumer side or producer side, or from developed to underdeveloped country. I think that will become the common banner to guide the industry forward. Because, we all know how important is the environment, the long-term sustainability, and how we can put all this into our production as well as sales. And as I mentioned in the beginning, it's not just the consumption, but also the end of cycle sort of treatment. Now, ESG will certainly be a very important subject. And also, it is not just an obligation or compliance, but also open up new opportunity. Look at Hong Kong, that we are benefiting from the green movement, green financing, for instance, green tech, which we are capable of riding on. Now, all these are new elements and new opportunity that are going to come into play as we raise the banner of ESG, as we promote this as a sustainable sort of element in our production. Now, all these are in fact also captured in the nation's 14th five-year plan. While a lot of attention on the 14th five-year plan will look at how Hong Kong featured, but I would always encourage people to read the 14th five-year plan in its totality, particularly in the nation's national strategy of going green, setting ourselves a sort of very ambitious aim on achieving carbon neutrality, and also sort of playing our part as an international player, and Hong Kong should be no exception. So with all this remark, I believe this 2 days program in its fourth time will provide yet another opportunity that does not only give us the opportunity to think, to reflect, to argue, to debate, but also to feature Hong Kong that, although a small city, but we have a bigger role that we can perform in this changing time. So with all this remark, I give a big applause to the organizer for having this summit, and I would congratulate its success in the coming 2 days. Thank you.